All right.
You ready, Joe?
Yes.
Thank you so much for letting us turn the tables on you.
My pleasure.
Right.
Appreciate it.
We're here, Joe. How
Now
are
I'm
you?
nervous.
Get ready.
Oh, no.
So appropriate for our show, we want to start by asking you, like, how do you think about your political philosophy, and who do you consider to be some of the influences on how you think about those things?
My political philosophy is very mixed, right? It's like I like a lot of different people's ideas, but ultimately all I really want is what's better for people. You know, I don't really have a vested interest in business. I'm not looking to like protect assets or anything weird, and I want people to have freedom. So in all ways, you know, and I think that when I look at politics, I look at like these utopian concepts about like what's possible, and then I look at what we have going on right now, and I wonder.
Joe, what are some of the formative political experiences of your life?
Well, I mean, I remember the first time I really got interested in politics was when Ronald Reagan couldn't remember whether or not he sold arms to Iran.
Iran-Contra.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like 21 years old, 21 years old. And I remember thinking like, what is happening? Because I always thought of presidents as, you know, you have a leader, and this leader is trying to do the best for the country, and we all respect the office of the president. And back then, that was really the case. Like back then in the 1980s, there was way less inflammatory rhetoric. There was a lot of people that didn't like Reagan, but the level of I don't like Reagan was never like the level of I don't like Trump.
Right.
Or now, currently, Obama or Biden rather is senile. Like there's a disrespect of Biden that didn't exist back then. And as a young man trying to figure out what was going on in the world, seeing that there's this guy who's clearly lying about selling weapons to someone who hates it. There was a guy named Jimmy Tingle. He's a hilarious comedian out of Boston, and he had a great bit about this that he would do in a heavy Boston accent. He goes, "Mr. President, if you ever sell arms to people who hate us in the future, jot it down." He goes, "Put it on a Post-it note. Stick it on your refrigerator." Like, do you know who Jimmy Tingle is?
No, I didn't know who he was.
A great political comedian. It was him and Barry Crimmins and Jimmy Credico. There was a few of these guys that were like really politically aware comics. Barry Crimmins in particular, who was really the head of the like if there was a godfather of Boston comedy, it was Barry Crimmins, because he was the most intelligent, he was the most well-read, the most politically aware, and he would be involved in a lot of like political demonstrations and all these different things, and he was kind of the guy who kept the Boston comedians honest. He kept them from being hacks, and he was just a very, very politically aware guy.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Tingle was aligned with him. He was one of those guys as well, who initially started out as just a regular comic and then became much more of a political comic, and then ultimately became a guy. I don't think he does really comedy shows as much as he does like one-man shows now. But Tingle's bits about it made me think about it a lot, and then watching, you know, the Oliver North thing on television and the Contras and the Nicaraguas and all that stuff, and then eventually when I did the podcast later, getting to interview Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, not the rapper,
right?
The real Rick Ross, who the rapper named himself after, who was the guy who was selling coke in South Central, making millions and millions of dollars to fund
the Contras, right?
And he didn't know. He had no idea what was going on. He had no idea. He thought he was just like so slick that he could stay operated. He literally did not know that that they were allowing him to do this.
And so when you pulled that thread, like from that Reagan moment, was that like led to more skepticism of politicians, led for you to think that they're all liars or it's corrupt, or sort of like where did that thread lead?
Well, I think when you're a 20-year-old, 21-year-old person, your brain's not really fully formed. So you think a lot of like scrambled thoughts. And I think I was too busy with my own life to spend too much time thinking about politics, but I was super aware that it's not what I thought it was. which was like one of the themes of my life. Like as I got older, more aware, like, oh, everybody pretends that this makes sense. This doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, everybody pretends that there's a system in place. It's like really like it's well-meaning and it's really fair and it's going to benefit everybody. It took a while to slowly unpeel the onion, and that was probably one of the first things was seeing Reagan say that. Was Reagan
It sort of like spoiled the illusion.
Well, it was just so obviously bullshit.
People always ask, they're like, what does Joe believe? And I'm like, look, I think it's like a skepticism of power. That's like the bedrock thing. And so Reagan was the genesis of that? Because if I were to throw a thread through all like your takes on politics, it's always something along the lines of, I'm not sure if I believe what that person is saying.
Yeah.
Like, is that where it comes from?
He was the first guy that I realized was the president, but also full of shit. I was like,
That's
wow.
a seminal moment, honestly.
For me, it was Iraq. Right.
Yeah, I remember watching, there was something on television about Nixon, about how, Watergate, and oh my God, he, bugged the opposition, and what a terrible person. But then, different people came along, and Gerald Ford was this bumbling guy, and then Jimmy Carter was like this really sweet guy, but couldn't really get the job done in terms of like getting the hostages released from Iran.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Reagan comes along, and it's all, win one for the Gipper, and everybody's all rah, rah, America. And then, this was all when I was young. And as I was 20, 21, the whole Nicaragua Contra thing and the Sandinistas, and watching that on television going, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is the president, he fucking remembers. I remember thinking that he fucking remembers. He's lying.
Right.
Maybe he didn't, honestly, because he was getting Alzheimer's, but most likely remembers.
No, he remembers.
He fucking knew. Is it uncomfortable for you how much unintentional power you have in the political sphere?
Yeah, it's weird. It's totally unintentional. That's why it's weird. It was there's no planning of any of this. It's just talking to people, and then all of a sudden, like, I still don't understand why it's so popular. I don't get it.
Really?
Like, I know a lot of other people do the same thing. I'm like, why is this fucking thing still number one?
Well, let's tease that out then, because you invented the long form podcast game. There are a lot of people who followed you into the game. What do you think they're doing wrong relative to you? Like, what are you doing right? Like, what is the secret sauce of JRE?
I don't know.
So, well, then what do you see?
That's the thing. I don't think about it too much.
What do you see other people doing that's wrong? Because people ask me, they're like, well, you've been on Rogan. Like, he says he just shows up. And I'm like, yeah, he might say that. But it's very clear to me that you're an extremely, like, a very good practitioner of conversation, knowing when to interject, knowing when to stay silent, knowing when to move something forward, knowing when to bring something around, being like, oh, I'm familiar with this person. Let me interject this at this time. It may seem artless, but it's definitely not. So, like, is that something that you learned? Is it a comedian skill? Because I listen to some comedy podcasts, and frankly, they're not as good. Some are decent. When I see you, I see somebody, endless curiosity. Is it innate in your personality? Is it a learned phenomenon? It's
both. I've always been curious, but I've learned how to be more effectively curious as I've gotten older. This podcast has been a massive education for me, an unintended, accidental education. The fact that I've been able to talk to so many interesting and intelligent people and get their perspectives and just sit across from them uninterrupted for hours at a time and get to see how their brain works, and then to consider my own brain. And then, in the beginning, there was a lot of bad podcasts. They didn't go that well. I wasn't that good at it. And I didn't think, first of all, I didn't think anybody was listening. I remember the moment I realized people were listening. I was at a sold-out show at the Chicago Theater, and I was on stage, and I was doing this bit, and it had something to do with the podcast. And I said, how many of you guys listen to the podcast? And the place went, yeah.
What year was this? What year was this?
Maybe 2011.
Whoa.
So it's like 2 years in.
That's why, because I'm thinking in the podcast, maybe? As a podcast historian or whatever, that was like the Mark Maron era. Right? Like, that's when I remember Mark Maron was like a thing. And I was like, what is going on with Mark Maron? Like, Obama went on Mark Maron's podcast, which was like crazy. And I remember being like, man, there's something going on in this space. But then it's like you not only eclipsed Maron, like you became probably I would say one of the single most influential people in American life. And so, like, when do you think that transition happened for you? I know you haven't changed your your like affect or anything, but like when do you think that was? Like,
I'm
what?
not sure.
Yeah.
Does it get into your? You were saying like you don't think about why it's successful. Is that sort of intentional?
Yes.
Because I feel like part of why what's continues to be compelling is that you don't bring to it all of this weight of like, oh, a lot of people are listening. I got to be really careful, and I got to really watch which can be a beautiful thing and it can also get you in trouble at times. But is that sort of like lack of digging into what's made it successful and the type of impact it could have or does have, is that an intentional strategy to keep it kind of what it is?
It's not an intentional strategy. It's probably a survival technique. Because if I did stop and think, it's like if I read all my Twitter mentions, I'd probably go fucking crazy.
Yes,
right? If I just put out
I have 1/10 and I had to stop reading because I was going fucking crazy.
You can't do it. And if I paid attention to all of it, I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I do, because then I wouldn't be able to think about those things, because I'd be thinking about my impact or my influence or what I did wrong or what I did right, or, you know, oh, people like that, I should probably lean into that. I'd be thinking about all these different things instead of my commitment is to just do the best job that I can. Always do my best. And if it's something that requires some sort of, research, like if I have an important subject and I don't understand it too much, I'll read someone's book, or I'll watch documentaries, or I'll do something to get myself prepared for it. I love things like the UFO subjects because I don't have to do any preparation. I do a little bit of, but it's like I know
you got that subject kind of locked down.
I'm dialed into it, but I don't think it would help me if I thought about the impact of the show. And I also don't think that I could do it the way I do it, because I think normally if someone had reached the kind of amount of exposure that I have and you were really hyper aware of it, you'd start to protect what you've accumulated.
You have to, right?
But when you protect it, then it stops being what it is. And I think that's one of the things that freaks people out about me, is that I talk wild. I talk wild shit like a comic that has like 10,000 people listening, but it's 10 million.
Where it's, where you have nothing to lose, but you actually have everything to lose.
But I kind of don't.
Right.
I kind of do, but I kind of don't.
Right.
You know, because it's like, I'm not a bad person. So like when I'm doing this, if I say something wrong, I can always apologize. If I'm incorrect about something, I can correct it. But my intention is always to be good. So I don't know how much I really have to lose, because I'm financially independent. So like that's a big one that holds people back, right? A big one that holds people back is financial influence. You know, the influence of executives or the influence of advertisers. And I've lost advertisers because of shows. And it's like, good luck.
You don't care.
Sorry, bye.
It doesn't hurt you.
I would have considered doing the podcast for no money. I thought about that in the future. I'm like, maybe there'll come a time where I just no longer have any ads. You know, because I'm like, you know, like maybe that would be the ultimate way. Because like if someone wants to cancel you, one of the things that they do is they contact your ad. They mass email campaigns.
Right.
And it doesn't work, but it works with some.
Right.
But I have a backlog of people trying to be advertisers. So, like, generally, if one drops off, there's always
somebody in
bunch.
the queue.
It's funny. That's part of the reason that we went subscription first, is that we were like, you know what? You know, when you're doing news, and especially in the beginning, they're like, we need to be able to rely on our people. But something you said, it was really interesting during our podcast. You said you talk to enough people, you can figure out whether they're telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
So how do you know when somebody's full of shit? Like, you've talked to thousands of people. Like, how do you know if somebody's full of shit or not whenever you're talking to them?
You don't really know, right? You kind of get a sense. Like, you get a sense of whether or not a person is being genuine. And sometimes you're doing jujitsu with them, right? You're like moving them in a certain direction, seeing how they respond. You're testing their ego.
Right.
You're challenging but maybe interrupt them on purpose. You know, maybe give them a little nudge. Like if you're concerned, they're like, you try to like see if they push back, like see where they're at.
Yeah.
You get a sense of a human, you know, like if you get around so many people so often and you have so many conversations, you you recognize patterns, and I think the brain sort of picks up on them. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you don't really know if someone's lying to you. Some people are just really good at lying.
Right.
Have you had a situation where you had someone on and after the fact you were like, upon reflection, maybe that person was full of shit?
Yes, definitely. Well, yeah, no question. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and some of them have been full of shit. Yeah.
When you say that that your goal is just to do a good job, how do you define that?
And the smoothest conversation I can where people don't get uncomfortable listening. I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was a friend of mine's podcast, and he doesn't have the people wear headphones. And one of the things that I tell people, when you have 2 or more guests, you must have headphones, because then people recognize when they're talking over each other. Because
You're very right. Actually, it happened when we were talking.
yes,
That's right. Yeah.
because when you hear your voice at the same level you hear that person's voice, then it becomes painfully obvious when you guys are, and it's like,
Cross-talking.
right, we just did 3.5 hours, right? And it's this weird dance we're doing where, we all have something to say, and it's kind of exciting, right? 'Cause
Very exciting.
We're talking about all these like really intense subjects, and it's really stimulating, and you never know like when to jump in and we're like letting each other. We were all really good dance partners. It was really fun.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not. And my friends that I was listening to was not a good, and I'm calling them afterwards. I'm gonna say, hey bro, you got to get headphones.
So what makes you walk out of this room and go, man, that was a fucking great episode? And then what makes you walk out of here and be like, shit, I should have done something better? Like what is, you don't have to name people necessarily, but like,
But if
what are
you
the
wanted
types?
to name people,
by
that
the
would
way,
be,
if you want to
that
call
would be
people,
entertaining
please
as well.
do. Yes.
Smoothness of absorption, right? Like whether or not it's easily absorbed into your mind. You're not uncomfortable. It doesn't feel gross. Like sometimes people say things, and even if they're honest, even if it's an honest, true thing, it'll sound braggy, or it'll sound hyperbolic. It'll sound maybe like disingenuously. You could fake humility, and people pick up on that too. They don't like that either. That's gross, right? Like,
Well, so this is funny though, because you're like, I don't think about it, but everything you're saying, you're the greatest audience advocate I've heard. So when people ask me about podcasting, I'm like, it's not about you. Like sometimes it is, but it's really not. And it's like
not.
you're always having to think about the people who are listening. So like, how do you do that? Like when you're talking about, when you see somebody do something, you're like, man, people at home are going to hate this. Like, do you think about that type of stuff when you're talking to people?
sometimes I do. Like sometimes I'm in the middle of talking to somebody, and they're just blurting out nonsense. I'm like, oh God.
What have I done?
This one sucks. And I've had a few of those. Like I had one, not recently, but within the last few months, and I walked out, I looked at Jamie, I go, that wasn't a good one. Yeah, just because sometimes people, you take a chance. Like a lot of these authors and professors, I've never spoken a word to them,
Right.
nor have I heard them speak. Like
Right.
a lot of
That's a good
people, I've just read their stuff, and maybe I'll listen to an audiobook where an actor was reading it, and you don't know how good they're going to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised, and sometimes it's like, it's awkward.
Yeah. I mean, we have the same experience, but generally we're doing 10-minute segments.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
you're
like
doing
less of
3
a risk.
hours.
You're not making an
Yeah.
hour plus commitment to this person. You mentioned actually with us that you are a very self-critical person. So
Yeah.
do you go back? Do you rewatch the
No.
episodes? You don't do any of that.
I don't need to.
Do you know in your
Yeah,
head?
I know
And so
it
what are the
sucks.
what are the type of thoughts that'll go through your head, or what are the things that you're looking for or thinking about, or that would stick with you? Like, I should have done that different.
Giving the people enough space is big, like letting them talk. Like, there's always this urge to talk. When 2 people are talking, you get excited.
Right.
And these subjects they're stimulating, right? And you want to talk. So you got to give people you want to sort of, first of all, you want to make them welcome, and you want to kind of caress the conversation. You don't want to beat on it. You want to let's figure out a way to make you the most comfortable. Let's figure out a way to get the most out of you. And then also, I think you have to have genuine curiosity, because I think we can all pick up on artificial curiosity.
Yes.
We can pick
Like,
up on.
oh, that's interesting. And you're like, you don't
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
mean
yeah,
that.
like, ew.
you don't mean that.
Yeah, well,
you're like,
that's late night TV hosts. They're
Yeah.
the worst.
Right.
It's
Very
crazy.
true.
It's so clunky and fake, and it's so air quotes professional. And the thing about podcasts is you're professionally unprofessional.
Yes.
Because you're really just having a conversation.
So,
and if you're doing it well, you're making these people feel like you're talking to someone who cares. You're talking to someone who cares about what, and you really, the only way to do that is to actually care. Like you really want to care about what this person is saying and thinking.
So it actually reminded me, because I've always, for the years I've listened to you, it's always been very clear, like an antithesis to the corporate suit, like the development deals, the comedy. So you're Joe Rogan. You've literally you were in LA for decades, Hollywood, sports, comedy. Basically 3 like titan areas of American entertainment. What do people not know about that industry that they should know, which also caused you clearly to be like, I've generally had a bad experience? And I'm obviously not with the UFC or anything like that, but like you having been at the center of all these worlds, you've seen a lot of shit, I guess, and it caused you to say, I cannot be controlled by these people. Like what were some of those experiences, and like why do you think that the industry is the way that it is today?
They don't have, I mean, here's the best way to describe what's going. This is the problem, not just with Hollywood, but also with Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is inexorably connected to show business. There is no getting around that. It's the reason why a large percentage of people move there, and it also massively affects the politics of the place, and not just politics, but social discussions, the way people communicate, because it's an incredibly disingenuous way of communicating, where you want to say the things that people are going to want to hear, because that way they're going to cast you. So here's the thing. You take these people, and generally speaking, people come to Hollywood if they have an acting dream. That's the big reason why, right? That's like probably the number one. There's comics, they come there and they're different, but not necessarily, because a lot of them get into acting and they get like corrupted by that system too. But the way this system works is you go there and then you go into a room like this one. So like maybe we could be the casting directors, and someone would come in and you go, hey, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you move from? And there's like a smugness to it and a weirdness to it, because they have power over you. And they're like, well, I'm from New Jersey, but, been acting. I did a bunch of plays and blah, 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 and I'm out here trying it out. Okay, Mark. Well, you're going to read for the role of Ted. And then, like some fucking PA will read off a thing. Well, Ted, I don't even know if we can do this, man. It just seems like it's all wrong. You're like, come on, man. We can do it. And so you're in this. I've done this so many times. You're in this like completely
like a hotel
non-natural environment. It's usually a conference room in a production office. And you're in this non-natural environment with these smug people that have this massive amount of power over you. And it shapes the way people communicate. Like I've been in rooms where they'll discuss politics like right away, and you see people bend to whichever way the wind is blowing. Like, what do I have to say?
What are they wanting me to say?
I think it's about time we had a woman president. Like they'll say shit.
Like,
well, you see it. You see the They don't have opinions. These, when I say they, some of them do, but a lot of them don't. What they have is a conglomeration of opinions that they've adopted because they think it'll be beneficial for their career. Because their career is
gross.
They're insecure people that go to a place where they're going to get rejected a lot. It is the worst thing ever for their mental health. I stopped dating actresses like in the 90s. It was like 94. I was like, oh, this is not good. Like this doesn't work. Like these people are crazy. And I'm like, I know I'm crazy, but I'm a like comedian / martial artist crazy. It's like a different kind of crazy.
Okay.
It's like a more like honest crazy. Like their crazy was I need to get cast in things. And also, I got insanely lucky. I auditioned for 2 television shows, and the 2 television shows I auditioned for, I got both of them. It was nuts. Like, I got the show called Hardball. That was the first thing I came out for. I got that. And then Hardball got canceled, and I auditioned for News Radio, and then I got that. So it was like 2 things in a row. It was unheard of. So just dumb luck. I auditioned for the right things, and then, so I didn't see this side of it, because I was already working.
The constant rejection side.
So I would go on auditions for movies and stuff that I probably didn't really want I
You
would
did
go,
it because you were supposed to, right?
You're supposed
Yeah.
to. My agent would literally tell me, you need to go out on these so these casting directors know who you are. So they know you and they like you. Even I go, but I can't even do this because I'm doing this. They're like, it's
go.
better to have them want you and not be able to get you.
That's weird.
So,
Makes
okay.
sense.
So, and then there was like maybe something that's going to be cast while you're on summer break. Okay, fine. So I would go on these auditions and I would see these poor fucks that were like lost in this world of being chosen for things. And that's what shapes the entire mindset of that part of the country. The entire mindset of that part of the country is doing things that you think other people will like.
Right.
Imagine a
that's so
hellscape of a
corrosive.
world where everyone in one business, everyone is liberal.
Yeah.
How is that possible? How is that possible?
Right.
How is it possible when the country is basically divided 50-50? So you're telling me that everyone who is everyone who's creative? Is it everyone who is expressive? Is it everyone who's theatrical? Is that possible? It's not possible because it's not really opinions. They're willing to not have any opinions on anything else other than feeding narcissism, feeding this career that seems insurmountable and impossible to achieve. Because when you're thinking about someone wanting to be like an actor on a television show, you're like, what are the odds that you make it? It's so small.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there's so many people in Hollywood that never make it. Like I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day about his ex-girlfriend. And she was really mean to him in college, and she cheated on him with his friend and all this. And she's still trying to make it now. She's 48.
Wow.
And he was talking about how like he ran into her, and there's this fucking weird moment. I was like, dude. Because it's crazy. A lot of them just drop off. They just quit because they realize they're clinging to this ship and they can't quite pull themselves up. And then they're in the middle of the ocean like, I got to drop off the ship. And then sometimes they drop off and they're 60 years old.
There's nothing
and they've
else
never
left.
made it.
Wow.
And then maybe they got like a bit part on like a sitcom where they walk in with a pizza and they have one line, they leave, and that's on their reel forever. Like this is that industry. So that industry has made a bunch of fucking insane people because they were insane going in there. They needed a lot of attention already. And then on top of that, they get rejected over and over and over again. And I remember this girl that I was dating, she would come home from auditions and then she'd just be like, just devastated because the audition didn't go well and she stumbled through things. She's just like, you could like feel the angst like pulsating off of their bodies. Like people were just, and you run into that more than you don't. Because most people are bitter and most people are weirded out and they adopt these liberal sensibilities and ideologies, and they don't necessarily do it because they thought these things through. I mean, occasionally you got your Mark Ruffalo type characters really all in on a lot of things,
Right.
but most of them are not.
Right.
Most of them are just nonsense people, and those nonsense people will get on stage and they'll say, like at the Academy Awards or at the Grammys, they'll talk about, this is what we have to do. We have to make sure that we support this and that, and it's fucking horseshit.
Or like
And
that Imagine video where they all
oh
sang.
my God,
I was like,
Oh, it's so
Perfect.
cringe.
I'm like, who asked for this? We
Perfect.
never fucking asked you for this.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect
And it's
encapsulation.
like, do you think you're actually helping anyone?
Yeah, I'm like,
right now?
no,
Like,
this is so
accomplishing
bad.
That was
nothing.
my first favorite one. My second favorite one was after the George Floyd thing, where they all did that black and white video. They're like, I will no longer stand for it. I will no longer stand for any race. I'm like, wait, how much racism are you standing for? Like,
Right?
what are you
What were you doing before?
Bro, you live in
standing
fucking Santa
for?
Monica. What are you? Everybody's super liberal out there. What are you experiencing?
So that's the people that like don't make it, right?
Even the people that do.
And then
we're
so do
talking
you
about
think,
two groups of people that do.
Right.
The Imagine people and the people in the other video
and
are people
so
that
do. Do you think that fame has its own like corrosiveness and like the people who actually make it, and then you're in a different situation where you're not faced with constant rejection. Now you're faced with constant adulation. Like, what does that do to people, and what has that experience been like for you?
I think you have to have something that tests your ego. And for me, it's always been martial arts and exercise and yoga. And, you know, we talked about sauna.
Yeah.
Like, that tests you as much as you don't think it does. You need things that test you. If you just have this smooth sailing life where you get out of the shower, you put your arm out and someone hands you a towel and you're like, I'd like fresh fruit. And they bring you a plate of fresh fruit. And you're like, and then that's a lot of people, especially when you are on a movie set and you're a major star. I would imagine that is your reality where you're just constantly being catered to. And you start thinking that you're different and better than other
You
people.
deserve
Yeah,
it.
right.
It's very unhealthy. And it's
Super
very
weird.
sketchy.
It's fucking weird.
It's
like
fucking
when I
weird.
think about it.
Yeah. It's
and
psychologically,
Right.
it's not where people are supposed to be. But you think about it, like, what do they behave like? Well, they behave like Joffrey in fucking Game of Thrones, right? Is that his name?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you got it.
You behave like a king. You behave like a dictator. Because like all these people are like throwing roses at your feet and like the red carpet shit. Like I fucking never would do red carpet. Even movies that I did, like I did a couple of movies with Kevin James. Like we'd like you to walk the red carpet. Like fuck you. I'm like I'm not. I want to go in the back of the theater. I'm not walking through that red carpet.
It's a very weird custom when you think
like
about
stand
it.
there, Joe, over here, and then some people are posing. They're picking out their outfit. I'm wearing a fucking hoodie
Picking
and
their
I'm putting it
angles.
on and sneaking in the back. I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that.
But the crazy thing, though, is that what you're describing, that old Hollywood, well, you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like everything is changing. Now it's all like the TikTok kids, like Mr. Beast. I mean, we encounter like some of this. You created this whole space, right, of the YouTube. Like
I didn't create this whole space.
Well, I think I would say that you were.
It would have happened without me.
I would
bro.
call you the father of the space, whether you like it or not. And like, I think we're an outgrowth of that. I think actually a lot of new comedy that I see, for example, like YouTube comedy is how I primarily engage with comedy. Like, and then, I mean, Andrew Schultz, I became friends with him because of your show. Like, I reached out to him and then I started engaging with this podcast and more like, but Hollywood didn't have anything to do with that. So I feel like everything has changed. The Logan Paul thing was kind of crazy to me because I'm like, you have this guy who was a YouTuber and then became a boxer. And now he's just did this thing with Floyd Mayweather where they just sold, what was it, like 1 million pay-per-views. I'm like, that's fucking crazy.
It's crazy.
And so now you have YouTubers who want to be boxers and boxers who want to be YouTubers. And because of you, I've engaged slightly in UFC. All these UFC guys are becoming influencers. Like I can see them online and they've got like fucking hot sauces and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like this weird change that happened. So like, what do you make of, as everything goes independent, everything moves online, has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? Like, what are some of the downsides, plus sides, or whatever, as things have changed in the last, it's only been like 10 years, and things are totally different.
Yeah, I don't think it's a worse or better. It's just a new world we're living in. Like, is the world worse or better because of social media, or worse or better because of smartphones? Well, it's better because maybe you can have an app that tells you if you're having a heart attack. You know, it's better because you can Google the answer to a question and you don't have to bullshit people anymore. You don't have to wonder. You don't have to go find an encyclopedia. It's better because we have more access to information. You can take videos of your kids and you can look at them forever.
Right.
I mean, I have videos of my daughter when she was a little baby and I pull them up on my phone all the time. They're my favorites. You know, she's 13 now, but I could see her when she was 1. You know, and that's
awesome.
There's something amazing about this technology. There's something amazing about all of it, but it's very challenging. You know, we're putting ourselves in an unusual position of stress where, you know, like when you see people that get in these social media squabbles, you know, you talked about Jamie Kilstein.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie Kilstein has a crazy story about, you know, he was like all in as a social justice warrior.
Yeah.
And he would tell me that he would attack people on Twitter and then he'd be walking down the street and he couldn't help like looking at his phone and checking the mentions and then, but he, you know, he's really honest about that. It was kind of brave.
Yeah.
He realized like he got canceled for like the most, it was like literally the most benign thing. Like
Right.
he was like trying to date someone.
Right.
And they were like, "You're a predator." And he's like, "What?
Yeah.
What does that mean?"
And he's like, but I've been doing this, so now what do I
yeah,
do?
like what he's saying?
Poor
Like,
guy.
what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a man who's attempting to date a girl,
Yeah.
like in a lot of those circles is like problematic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not even real. What it is like it's like we were talking about with Elon or with money earlier. It's attack vectors.
Yeah.
It's finding a thing to attack you on. And when people can't, when there's nothing to attack, they attack things and then they justify that that's something that they should attack.
Right.
When you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And one of the things about social media is that people generally look to complain about things, whether it's to complain about people or it's to complain about the state of politics or the climate or whatever the fuck it is. Like you get the most juice out of complaining about things. And the algorithms recognize that obviously as well, which is why the algorithms recognize that the things that people interact with most are the things that they hate. So those are the things that people go after. And they say that it's like, oh, well, they're engineering it to make us, you know, hateful and angry. But my friend Ari did an experiment and he went on YouTube and he only looked up puppies for like months. And all YouTube suggested was puppies. They didn't
Right.
suggest
So they're just
like,
serving you what you
They
want.
didn't
they didn't
suggest
suggest
like
right.
murdering
KKK
puppies or
videos
something.
or-
Yeah. They're like,
No,
well, if
it's
you
just-
like puppies, you're gonna love killing
Yeah.
puppies.
Look,
Right.
if you look at my YouTube is like there's some political discussion, but it's a lot of like martial arts matches and professional pool and like mindless stuff like muscle cars and things along those lines. But it's like your social media algorithm, whether it's I don't use Facebook very much, but whatever you're looking at most is what they're going to recommend to you most.
Right.
So it's more of a reflection of the problem with human psychology, is that we do tend to concentrate on negative things, which I think is overall very unhealthy for us because we're hardwired to deal with real problems because we evolved trying to get away from predators and enemy tribes are coming over the hill and trying to steal our resources, and now everything's pretty fucking easy in that regard. So now we're looking for problems in our culture. We're looking for problems in the way people communicate, and we're looking. In many cases, we're looking to enact power over other people to avoid looking inward at our own problems and difficulties.
Right.
If you look at online, the people that are the most disciplined, that accomplish the most things and have the most impact, spend the least amount of time complaining about other people.